Having covered this agency for a long time, I have a nuanced understanding of the overlapping concentric social circles which have come to define its soft power political dynamics. And as a result, as a number of these very serious issues with the Commission have come to public light over recent years, whether that be the situation with former executive director Sean Collins being intimately connected with a lawyer for a company called Greatest Hits that was under investigation by the CCC during Collins' tenure as executive director. And then, of course, Collins went on, after he left the commission under extremely controversial circumstances in the fall of 2023, to work with this lawyer, whose name is Nicholas Adamopoulos. That was one work on a cannabis industry consulting firm, no less. That was one situation that was a little weird. And then, of course, there were allegations by currently suspended Cannabis Control Commission chairperson Shannon O'Brien that a group of CCC staffers allied with Collins and two other individuals, Cedric Sinclair and Justin Schrader, had worked together to run a playbook to take out commissioners, in particular commissioners who had attempted to reform an internal staff culture within the agency that was defined by nepotism, conflicts of interest, and complacency. Now, that background being set helps to explain some of the other crises that have been happening over the last 6 months with this godforsaken agency. One of which was allegations that up to 50% of the product, the billions of dollars in product on the adult and medical use market that is sold per year in Massachusetts, would actually fail testing for the presence of contaminants, in this case total yeast and mold, if it were subject to authentic testing rather than manipulated testing that's currently being offered by one or two bad actor labs in the Commonwealth. And you might say to me, okay, Grant, that sounds like a side issue. No, it's not. And the reason why it's not is that you will come to find out that the CCC's internal testing lab department is run by an individual whose first name starts with K that used to work for a laboratory in Framingham, who has since changed names and ownership but is still known for allegations of conducts like what is occurring related to the manipulation of contaminant testing. And wouldn't you know it, the bad actor labs are never held accountable, despite the fact that there is demonstrative data indicating that the CCC's internal testing oversight department should have taken action years ago in the interest of protecting public health and safety in order to insulate the market from the presence of these manipulated products that only made it to market because of complacent testing labs that were, in essence, taking a type of testing for contaminants. There's two ways to test for total yeast and mold when looking at cannabis. One of them is called plating. One of them is called PCR. And then within PCR, you have a bifurcation in the sense that there is qPCR and then PCR. Now, in the context of cannabis testing, plating is the gold standard, and it is also the gold standard in the agricultural industry, but it takes a decent amount of time. Now, there are also certain critiques of plating, such as, for example, one type of 3M plating doesn't pick up a specific type of yeast or something. But on the whole, plating is the industry standard. Now, PCR methodologies are also very good, and when implemented with the correct oversight from things like the CCC's testing lab, internal testing lab oversight department, that kind of testing can be very effective too. But there is a very interesting nuance involved in the oversight of testing labs, in particular as to two things. One, inclusion and inclusion lists related to what types of contaminants or specific types of total yeast and mold are tested for by these, in particular, qPCR methodologies in the context of this kind of testing. And then also whether unenriched or enriched samples are used by the people implementing these qPCR methodologies in order to test for the presence of contaminants. And you might say, well, Grant, why is that so important? Well, an unenriched sample can yield results quicker than the 72-hour turnaround time that is commonplace for plating and PCR total yeast and mold results. But a qPCR test can only turn around in under 72 hours if the sample is unenriched. And you might say, okay, Grant, well, why does that matter? Well, the accreditations, I believe it's through a board called the AOAC. The only accreditation that I'm aware of, which actually came about as a result because Nevada regulators were very upset at a specific qPCR testing manufacturer company. The only AOAC accreditation that's been offered to a qPCR methodology manufacturer has been in the context of enriched samples, from what I understand. But there is a lot of unenriched sampling going on that is leading to a lot of false negatives for total yeast and mold. And that is one microcosm of how this breakdown in the commission's internal structure can manifest itself in a threat to public health, the undermining of the regulatory apparatus, and etc. And if you're wondering how it all ties together, it's because of the overlapping concentric social circles in the human beings that are the decision makers. It's not that this is very complicated. If you are a scientist and you work in the government, it is very easy to understand how all these products got to market that are so dangerous. But the politics of fixing this error is what causes the breakdown in the CCC's response. That's what I'm trying to highlight here. That's one example of it with the testing labs.